Hey everybody, and welcome to another Cricut Craft tutorial. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays with the occasional bonus live video. If you haven't yet, make sure you hit that bell icon because that will alert you to when I post a new video. Today we're going to talk about how to get that perfect, professional, no bleed stencil. And we're going to use simple tools that you can get anywhere. We just have some multi-surface paint, and this is acrylic paint by Folk Art. We have some stencil brushes, and then we're going to use some shapes from the dollar spot at Target, and these are super easy to find and really easy to use, and we're going to make a really fun welcome sign with those. But as we go, I will tell you all the different ways that I make sure I don't get any paint bleed in my stencils. Let's go ahead and get started. So what I've done is I just cut out some vinyl, and I just used a pattern that I really didn't think I would use on anything. And we reverse weeded, basically taking out the main part and leaving the background of the vinyl. So what we'll do is we're going to just burnish it. And I laid them out so that they were in order so that I wouldn't screw it up. So I'm just going to place my decal, or my stencil in this case, onto my wood piece. So I know this one's going to be a little bit tight, but it's okay. And honestly, I kind of don't mind if it's going to look a little bit rustic. So if they're not 100% straight, I'm not super worried about it. This one actually could move over like a bit. And you can totally attempt to move them over if they'll unstick. These won't stick real well to this, which is kind of nice. And I will say there is glitter all over them. So that's something that may hinder the sticking. But as long as they stick well enough for you to stencil on them, you should be fine. So what you'll do is you'll just peel your transfer tape off. And this is not always super easy just because your backing is probably going to be the same size as your transfer tape, but you can easily just peel it right off just like this. And you do want to go slow, and then we'll go over it again with our fingers around the edges just to be sure that we don't have any bubbles, because that's where a lot of people get bleeding from, is bubbles. If you guys are wondering, this is a printed patterned 651 vinyl. It's one I don't really use. I got it in a grab box, but that's why I like this, because I can easily reuse these patterns for other things like stenciling. So we're going to leave this like this, and we'll just do the rest of the letters. Once we're done, I'll show you how to apply the paint. Now that we've applied all of our stencils, and we do make sure, and I want to make sure that you guys know, to leave some extra space around your vinyl. So when you go to cut this, you want to make sure your letters are spaced apart so that you do have some outside space around each of your letters. And we're going to use a foam brush, which I typically am not a fan of, but I couldn't find my stencil brush. So I'm going to give you guys some tips on how to use a sponge brush. What we're going to do is just dip our paintbrush into the paint, but then we dip it and tap it onto our paper, and that just gets some of that excess paint off, because you don't want a ton of paint on your brush when you're doing this, because it can bleed under your stencil. Now, you want to tap very, very lightly when doing this, because again, you don't want too much paint on your design. We are then going back for more paint, and as you see, I continually dip that paint off because you don't want it to be overly painted. You also don't want to squeeze your brush, especially if you're using a sponge brush, because it does absorb some of that paint, and if you have too much paint, it may bleed under that stencil. So this is definitely a less is more type of situation, because you can always go back and add a second layer if you need to. So this is what the first layer looks like, and you can always go back and add more if need be. If you have a long sign, you're going to want to do just a couple letters at a time, because you don't want that paint to fully dry before you peel off your stencil, because that can lift the paint. So you're going to want to be conscious of that. And with so many letters, we're only going to do a couple, and then we'll go ahead and peel off the stencil. We're going to do our second coat, and the second coat always goes way faster than the first. And I'm sorry that this letter's out of frame, but the rest are in frame. But I always do the second coat before that first coat is fully dry. The nice thing is, because you're using light layers, they dry enough that you're able to put that second coat on very, very easily, very, very soon after you finish. Because again, as soon as we're done with this coat, we're going to peel off our stencil. And it's going to be done the same way. You just dab your paint, tap off some of the paint, and then lightly tap it on to your design. Always, always, always make sure that you are not using a ton of paint. And as you can see, I don't have hardly any paint left on my paper, but it's plenty to do the second coat for my stencils. We're ready to peel the stencil off, so as you can see, we're going to peel it. Now be careful because you are going to get paint on your hand, so just be aware and make sure to keep your hand clean and peel nice and slowly. And I like to peel against the grain, not with the grain, as much as I possibly can when I do these. And as you guys can see, there's absolutely no paint bleed. It's beautiful, it's perfect, and it looks really, really nice, clean, crisp, and professional. We're going to put the second coat on our last set of letters, and one thing is that I put way too much paint on this E. At first, you can see that it's kind of bubbling and things, so what you can do is use your brush and take a little bit of that paint and dab it off onto one of your other letters, which is really nice because it helps keep you from having way too much paint and any paint bleed on them, and it's super easy to do and a great paint saver. You can see our second set of letters has no paint bleed as well. Now, another tip is that whatever wood you're putting this on, make sure it's smooth. If you need to sand it down, absolutely sand it down and make sure that you have cleaned it and gotten any of the sawdust off of it that may be on there. These were really smooth to begin with, so it makes it a little bit easier. It takes a step out, but sanding really is very easy, and you can get a very inexpensive palm sander from Amazon or from Home Depot, and it'll just make your projects just a little bit quicker. We're going to coat these in a clear gloss polyacrylic by Minwax. It's the same stuff you use when you put your glitter in your Christmas bulbs. The reason I'm doing this is so that it will prevent the scratches on any of my surfaces, especially on the letters, and also to help just kind of keep that color a little bit more true to itself. And I really like the look of the gloss against the wood. It just gives it a nice clean look. So you want to make sure that you coat it nice and evenly on all of your letters, and that you make sure that you do cover the sides. I do use a silicone mat when I do these, just to keep that polyacrylic from getting on my work surface, and that way it doesn't get on the back of them and they don't get stuck to anything. Because if you did this on paper and you got polyacrylic on the back and put it back down, your polyacrylic might end up gluing itself to the paper, and we don't want that because that is a pain to clean up. To do the glitter ones, I do them just like I did the other ones, but these I did the fronts first, and then I'm going to go back around and do the edges just to try to minimize the glitter from sticking to the front. And I apologize that this is a little bit off camera. I was working kind of a small space. But what I'm doing is just dabbing the glitter side with the polyacrylic, not wiping. You can see me dabbing. I'm not wiping because I don't want to accidentally wipe that glitter off because it is pretty thick, but it was very loose and falling off. Once I've put that polyacrylic on, I'm going back through and just checking any of those little divots for puddles or for absolute like big chunks of the polyacrylic. And if I find any, I just dab them again and dab them off. And then if there's any on the back, I just wiped it off. And then we checked the front for like a little puddle like right there. And if you have any kind of an excessive amount, you can just wipe it right off and just brush it on to your leaf. Cut some string. I just cut a little piece of twine, and I'm going to start just with this first one. And I'm going to tie the loop for to hang it on first. So what I'm going to do is just tie a real simple, I'm going to tie a knot down here. This is just for strength. I like to put a knot right at the top just to keep it strong and like that it won't unravel. So I just do like a double knot right at the top. Nothing too crazy, but just keep it nice and neat. And then all I do is just a knot up here at the top. And you can do this a couple different ways. You can either tie them like in a bow. You can tie them like a slip knot. You can tie them any way you want, but I'll like do it where I loop them together and then I pull them out and I just make sure that they're fairly even. And then I take my knot and just pull it up to the top. And you don't have to be too crazy with this. This shouldn't be a super heavy sign. So once you have that part, because these only have the hole in the tops of them, you could potentially drill a second hole. I really don't want to do that. I don't like the idea of having to drill a hole. I don't want the chance of cracking them. So what I'm going to do is take my string and I'm going to, we can actually, you know what, let's start at the bottom because that'll be a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is take it and loop it through the last letter, which obviously is an E, And we're just going to pull a whole bunch of string through. And you can do this a million different ways. Like, I just think this might be like the easiest way for me to do it. But you can do it however you want. And I'm just going to loop a bunch because I want to make sure I have plenty of string. And if I have too much, it's fine. This was super cheap. I got it at Target for $1. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to tie a knot just down here. And I'm going to do this for each of our shapes because I want to make sure that they stay where they're supposed to. So then we're going to take and go to the M. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to loop this through. And you could put like a little piece of tape because it's going to fray a little bit. You can put a little piece of tape on there if you'd like, or you just fold it in half so that the fray doesn't get in the way, and you just shove it through the hole. You can see it comes out. So then I'm going to take this and pull the string all the way through, and I totally went that the wrong direction. So when you do these, I recommend going through the back and not the front. There is a rhyme to the craziness. It helps keep that string from going in the front of your ornament or your wood hanger. I'm going to trim the bottom of that off just so I'm not messing with it. So then all I do is I just lay this down and I just kind of figure out about where it goes, like how far away from the other one. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need to make it some absolute crazy perfect thing. And then what you can do is take this, re-loop it, and I loop it right back through. That's why I do use a slightly thinner string. And when I do that, I tie the knot at the same time. And that just keeps it from moving down the string. You just tie your knot. Okay. And then we'll do the same way for the O. So again, we're going to go through the back. And it's not always super easy to get it through. So go through the back. I'm going to pull it all the way through. I'm going to lay these down a little bit further, and then I'm just going to pull it down to about where I want it. And again, if you want to be a perfectionist, you can measure. I have zero desire to measure these because it's just another step that I don't think we need. And then again, we're just going to tie our knot as we go and pull this around. And we're going to do this for each and every one of these, and it's just going to keep them from going off the rails. And if you need to add a little bit of string, you totally can. You can just tie a knot and add more string. So we're going to let this continue on through. I'm going to finish looping these around, and then we'll have our finished sign. Here is our finished sign. I think it came out really, really nice, and it really didn't take that long as far as doing the actual craft itself. If you guys have any questions or great tips that you use to make your stencils look awesome, please let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Hit the bell icon because that will alert you to when I post a new video. If you guys have any video suggestions that you're looking for, let me know in those comments down below. I make these videos because you guys ask for them. I hope you all have a really fantastic day and happy crafting.